Welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk, a podcast exploring the topics of music, education, technology, and the intersections between them, with a special focus on the productive and creative process. I'm your host, Robbie Burns. This is embarrassing because we're going to talk all about my technical questions regarding MusicFirst today, and I've never watched a single MusicFirst video.
Thanks. I work really hard on them.
I would know that you're like the dude if I had watched them.
I am the dude. It's actually one of my favorite things to do because you get to tell people how to do it right, and then hopefully they do it that way forever. So it's the easiest way to say, like, you're going to be the most successful if you follow these steps in this order. You can do it other ways if you want, but this is the most sensible way to go through it. And I've gotten pretty good at video editing. Sometimes I sort of find old files of my old videos, and they're like not cute, and the audio is really bad, and I sound really bad because I wasn't like editing out my sniffles yet, but they've gotten pretty good, so I recommend checking them out.
Okay, you're already saying good stuff that I think is useful for people to hear, so I'm gonna like speed rush stuff that I normally don't speed rush. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh my god. Hi everyone. My name is Julianna Mateyko. I am the Director of Support and Training at MusicFirst. My friends call me Jay, J-A-Y-E, in case you're keeping score at home. My background is in music education. I did my undergrad at Syracuse University and my master's degree at New York University, which is how I got looped into MusicFirst. Dr. Jim Frankel, director of MusicFirst, did a lecture in one of my first graduate classes. And we reconnected right before I was going to finish school. And he offered me a job. And that was about 5 years ago, which is crazy. So, you know, something that I bring to the table is the fact that I am a trained music educator. So I've now become, over the last 5 years, an expert in this software, but also have that educator experience and brain power. I play the saxophone. It's my primary instrument, but no jazz, just classical saxophone. So you're welcome, world, for that musical art that's been put out there. I like running. I like reading. I like yoga. I like being quarantined, to be honest. Do
you feel like, in a way, that you're built for this kind of situation we're finding ourselves in?
I do, because commuting is a disaster. Living in New York City is amazing, and it has so many perks, but also like being on the subway for 40 minutes every morning, surrounded by people, is not great. I also have like a bunch of nonfiction books I would like to read. And I think right now is this incredible time where, like, I FaceTime with a friend in California last night, and the night before I FaceTime with a friend, like with a glass of wine and dinner. And I feel like we are all still very connected, and I've been texting with people pretty much constantly. I've been working normal hours, which it like keeps things feeling as normal as possible. So I try and like walk around my apartment every couple hours and that sort of thing. But I think in general, I'm feeling pretty good. It's also only been one day for me because I was with family last week. So I've done all of 24 hours of quarantine. So we'll check back in with me in a week and we'll see how we feel about it. But that's where I'm at right now.
I'm wrapping up week one, and I feel like I am definitely have set myself up to be comfortable this way. Like, it kind of helps that we moved into a house that needs a lot of things done and had a kid like a couple months before this. So that's the silver lining, is like he's very cool, and I hang out with him. When I'm bored, I play Animal Crossing.
Yes.
And I too have been like just texting and FaceTiming, also like recording more of these episodes than usual. So like it's just cool. I'm set up to be creative at home. Like I think most of the performing arts people know that like band is not going to be what it used to be when we're sitting in front of our computers. But like as far as like my ability to do the best that I can with the circumstances that we're in, I feel pretty much set. So I get it. But I also like after week 1 though, I can already like that little bit of like mental turnaround. Like I can feel like already that this isn't going to be cool in a month.
Yeah, and that's, well, in New York, schools have been closed until the 3rd week of April, I think. It was a 1-month shutdown. In Virginia, they've closed schools until the end of the school year. I don't know what they've done in Maryland, but it seems to be, for me, the most challenging aspect is not having a end date. So, like, are we going to do this forever? Are we going to do this for 6 months? Are we going to do this for 18 months? Are we, like, how many? I think really at this point, I'm just trying to figure out how many push-ups I can get myself to be doing by the end of quarantine. And that's like my long-term quarantine goal is push-ups.
That's amazing. I have a pull-up bar in the doorway to the office of the instrumental music teachers at my school, and the orchestra guy there and every class turnaround we do as many pull-ups as we can.
It's amazing. And how many can you do?
Well, it's tricky because like I don't
one.
I'm not counting right half. I'm not counting them in terms of how many can I do. It's more because we're pacing ourselves, so like I'm not expending myself every 45 minutes. The idea, and then we have a whole leaderboard on the whiteboard, so the kids are the idea is we're like modeling consistent growth over time in a way that's like not an instrument for them. And they of course you have to like constantly retrain them. No, we're not competing against each other. We're competing against ourselves yesterday. And so we get we have our little pull-up chart. I mean, I average like we'll do 10 rounds about a day, and I don't know, like I'm averaging like 6 pull-ups every 45 minutes or so.
Nice.
So that's, I mean, like when you're doing like 40 to 50 pull-ups a day, that's like way better than no pull-ups a day.
That's correct. I did 5 push-ups yesterday in 2 minutes, and I was like, nice, good for me. I'm going to take a break now.
But you'd be surprised how much like you can do at home. Well, it was just to comment on the pull-up thing real quick. So I wake up the Monday, this is last Monday, the first Monday that we're not in school, and there's a shared Apple Note, like in the Apple Notes app, you can like share a folder of notes with someone. I have a new shared note in my notebook called Pull-Up Chart, and it's from the orchestra teacher, and it's
incredible.
It's got like a spreadsheet in it of like to where we can track our daily pull-ups because we each have a bar at home.
That's great.
So
that's what you gotta do.
It's
I
cool.
mean, it's that sort of thing that's keeping everyone together. And like I'm a runner, so until they stop me, I can be running outside and doing that. So that's sort of a helpful thing. I went running on Sunday or Saturday, and it was a little bit more crowded than I was expecting. And so I'm like ducking and weaving and trying to like take 6 feet away from people and like not, spit on the street where people are walking and like go spit in the woods. Sorry, gross. I look at my recording like I'm looking at an audience apologizing to them. Sorry.
It's pretty hilarious, the social interactions that happen outside, because we've gone on some walks, and it's just funny because like you can see all of the wheels turning in the people's heads who you pass. Like, like are they a more cautious person than me or a less cautious person than me? Do they care that if we are like within 3 feet? I don't, but do they? They're looking at me weird. Do they want me to like pull off to the side while they walk by, or do they want to shake hands? I don't know. It's just, you can see all of the questions going on in everyone's eyes as you walk past someone else on the street.
They come at you with an outstretched hand. And you're like, no.
Yeah, it's like you can just see everyone is like going through that same inner dialogue, and like kind of it's just awkward because most people will like inch away like because we also have the baby, and they're like, oh, baby, and it's like really it's like okay to pass me on. You don't have to like go into the trees. Like we can share the pathway. It's fine.
It's amazing how quickly things have changed. I have like a week's worth of frozen food in my apartment, and that's about as prepper as I got. I'm a conceptual prepper, less of an actual prepper. I understand the importance of prepping, but am I prepped? No, I'm not.
Yeah,
No.
well, I mean, with like Instacart and Doordash, who needs to think ahead?
Dude, the first time I got groceries delivered, game over. My life changed.
We haven't done it yet, but I registered for an account.
Step one.
I did. It was easy. It's easier now because Apple now has one of those sign-in things, like sign in with Facebook, sign in with Google.
Oh, yeah.
There's now sign in with Apple, and I've been like hesitant about those things because like I'm pretty liberal about privacy online, but I don't know, something about Facebook and Google having everything seemed, and like Apple, like I believe that they believe that they're concerned about privacy. I don't know if at the end of the day, like it really is feasible for them to be better at it. Like I think they're better at it, but like, are they as good as, like, is it really everything that's on my iPhone stays on my iPhone? I don't know, but I feel a little better about clicking the sign in with Apple button.
Yeah.
So Instacart, it's easier, like it was an impulse button, I was just like, yeah, sign me up, use my Apple ID. Do it. But no groceries yet.
This podcast brought to you by Instacart login procedures.
Yeah. Well, do you know, so this is going to have to get edited out because this is so boring, but I care about this stuff. When you go to the web, like let's say you use sign in to like MyFitnessPal or something with Facebook, and then you go onto the web, that same Facebook button is on the website. Okay. So Apple requires that third-party apps, if they offer a Facebook or a Google sign in, you have to offer, as of like, this happened last week, you have to like offer the Apple button now. But Instacart sent me an email that was like, do you want to confirm your password? And I was confused because I shouldn't have to if I clicked sign in with Apple. Mm-hmm. And then I furthermore went to their website to investigate more, and there was no sign in with Apple button on their website. They like haven't coded it yet. Yeah.
You done got robbed by Instacart and you didn't even get any groceries out of it.
Do you have a Sprouts?
No.
They're like if you turned the spirit of a farmer's market into a grocery store, I guess.
Okay.
It's just the same kind of place that people who go to Whole Foods go, but smaller.
I see.
Different options, but of the similar spirit. Like
I know those people. I'm a Trader Joe's man myself, but not anymore.
Yeah. Right. You weren't trading anything at Joe's.
Good one. Leave that in for sure. That joke's got to stay.
That's got to stay. All right, maybe I'll leave the whole sign in with Apple Instacart. It's valuable.
People can fast forward. There's a fast forward button.
Well, actually, this is a great time. Maybe I should have said this earlier. So no one, like, I know that a fair amount of people listen to podcasts, but what I don't think most people know is that most podcast players now support a feature called Chapters. And I
love that.
Yeah, I actually do take a really long time to mark the chapters topically as best I can. I even changed the album artwork so that like on your phone's lock screen, like if we're talking about Instacart, like it's probably like gonna show the Instacart logo when I just take the time. So if you
incredible
think if you're like you posted this on Facebook and said that I would learn how to use MusicFirst better, and you've just been talking about long walks and signing with Apple.
We skip to minute 10, dog. It's cool.
Yeah, like just here's what you do. You scroll, if you're in Apple Podcasts, which I assume is still like the most popular one, you like from the album art screen with the play and the pause button, you just like start swiping down. You start scrolling down.
Oh, amazing.
And then eventually you get a chapter listing with like timestamps of the discussion.
Cool.
So yeah, I took the time to do that. So skip this mess and future mess if you want to do that.
That's Attention audience.
So I do like we were talking about like building ourselves up to be effective in a quarantine situation. Like I'm super lucky about the way that my music team teaches is a lot of our resources and communication is already online through our school's music website, we try to not rely too much on Canvas, which is our learning management system, but it's effective as it needs to be. Google Docs, we have, we already have practice resources online. We have all of the curricular resources we've made online. And since our curriculum for our sectional group, which is like our pull out like clarinet class of the week, that kind of thing, since that's all based on the development of individual skills, I'm gonna find it fairly easy to just have the kids turn those in through a video instead of in person. So aside from the fact that band rehearsal is ruined forever, which is nothing, we can't do anything about, like there isn't a voice chat app. If I see another Facebook post about what voice chat app should I use to teach, like there isn't one where you can play duets with your students. There isn't one where you can teach a band class, an orchestra class, or a choir class. Like there's nothing. So you just have to, I think, do the best you can with the technology to not like have the technology totally transform the way you format your structural goals and curriculum.
There's maybe you have it on the tip of your tongue, but there's some sort of method or like system about using technology in your everyday life, and the first step is like supplementing what you do with technology. The second step is replacing what you do exactly with technology, and then sort of the final like galaxy brain is finding better ways to do what you do utilizing technology tools. And I can't ever remember what it's actually like. It's got a name. It's a hierarchy. It's something I should look up on the internet sometime. But I think a lot about that, where we're in the stage of how do I have a band class where all my students sit down at the same time in chairs and play when I'm sitting in front of them. And I think we have to move on from that, because like you were saying, that you can't like it and like, do you want to? Like part of the beauty of ensemble playing is that interaction between you and others creating together. I don't think that putting a piece of technology in between people invalidates that. That's not what I'm trying to say, but I think like why try and recreate the wheel with a computer when you can use the computer to do other really cool and engaging stuff, and encourage your students to keep practicing and making music and trying to find ways to play with students. Like during the webinar I had with MusicFirst customers earlier today, someone was talking about having students record using the same tool. And she was asking about Soundtrap, and I was like, that's exactly what Soundtrap is designed for. Noteflight is a collaborative creative tool as well. Like, get students doing things, and also, doing things together to sort of allow for that community-oriented aspects to continue without trying to figure out, like, if I have all 80 of my kids log in to Zoom at the same time, can we hit a downbeat together? Because I bet you can't. I would love it if you could. Like I want to see it. I want to see everyone trying different things, but not just trying to replace what we've been doing. Because I don't know.
Yeah, I don't mean to discourage people in what I said a second ago, but yeah, I do think like that you have to, in our current time, like, yes, you're right. The communal aspect of teaching is going to be probably the hardest thing to recapture, if it's even possible to. And I think we have to, like, if you've at least if you've moved on past the acceptance part of that, then the questions you should be asking are not how do I recreate a performance ensemble, as much as what are the things that technology can help me to do, maybe even in some cases better. Like my district has, I should get this out there, my district has not given us any directive to teach anything yet. Like, we've explicitly been asked not to. I have a feeling that this week we will get more information about that expectation, but my only experience so far has been teaching my private lessons online, and there are some actual benefits to doing that. Like, I can see my students' practice spaces, I can watch their posture in their own environment, I can say, now take out your pencil or metronome, and they're like, oh, well, that's in the other room, and I'm like, well, get it. Like, what are you thinking? Like, you see all these things that are obviously not great solutions long term, but like, I think if you look at your classroom and you say, okay, well, what can technology maybe do that'll supplement or even like make better? Like, I know for a fact that I'm going to have to take a lot of in-person performance assessments and have them either be like, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, like be like a practice first or or even just a video recording that they upload to Google Drive. Like the act of recording a video of a student, like that's going to be more practice than some of them are already doing. Do you know what I mean? So like I'm trying my best to see that as a strength. Like there are going to be ways where we can engage, but I don't think that anyone's instructional goals should be shifting to like technological, you know what I mean? Like the technology is not, it's here to either supplement or to make it better, as you said, but using better words, but not to like reinvent totally how we teach.
Right. And I think this is Barb Friedman's big concept that she focuses on is teach the music, students will figure out how to use the tools. So instead of doing lesson 1, this is all of the features and functions and buttons and Soundation, it's let's make an ABA song with 2 loops and let's figure out how to do that in the tool. So students are very basically learning about form and then expressing that learning with the tool itself. And I think that technology in particular can be really challenging. And like technology, you can't see my air quotes, audience. I'm doing quotes from my microphone in case you can hear them. Like it's so overwhelming because you have to learn how to use it as an educator. You want to be one step ahead of your students for the most part. And you also need to figure out how to use it in a pedagogically appropriate way. So it's those 3 things to try and all figure out. And especially right now, like we have teachers who are using MusicFirst to help supplement their online remote learning who aren't familiar with any of these types of tools or even experienced with a learning management system. So how does my tech support team best support those people who are starting from such a foundational level by like 1, keeping them calm as much as possible, and 2, like showing things that are pre-made and helping them get things figured out in a way that is helpful to them. So it's a very complicated time to be using technology.
It is, but and I think again on a meta level, I think it's probably an interesting opportunity for your team because you have what did you just like multiply by 10 the amount of people who are using MusicFirst? Yeah,
it's been overwhelming.
How are you working normal hours?
Well, I'm me personally, I would rather work late than get started early. So I'm usually like in the office around 9:30 and will, if I need to break for dinner and then come back afterwards, we're putting in weekend hours. It's been insane. It's been truly crazy. It's also been really rewarding. I mean, like I have a job. I have friends in arts administration who are like orchestras canceling performances in New York. Like the opera is closed. So all the people who work for the opera. So I'm grateful to have a job and I'm willing to do what it takes because this is the exception, not the rule. But our team is at maximum capacity all day long, every single day, 7 days a week. And
yeah, I can imagine.
That's just where we're at. I'm hoping, I'm hoping we're all taking a minute to like stand up and drink water and stretch a little bit every so often because that's my biggest challenge when I work from home, especially when there's so much to focus on, is I'll sort of look up and it'll be 5:15 and I haven't moved in 4 hours and that's not good. So trying to balance all the pieces and trying to understand that people are afraid and people are trying to do their best. So we have to do our best. It's not to be like super cheese, but.
Yeah, well, no, I think it helps. I'm trying to exercise some empathy myself because I am like I was saying before, like I am pretty confident with technology. So like I'm looking at my week and I'm thinking like, okay, if I'm asked to do anything online that if I were asked just to give a single assignment, like to give an hour and a half of classwork to a student this week, like it's done. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't have much to do to get up and running, but that's not the case for everyone. So I was saying earlier, like, that I've sort of built myself for this. I'm super lucky that right before, maybe just like a month before this all went down, my general music class went to MusicFirst. After years and years of fighting this fight and having conversations, we finally decided that due to some technology resource changes at our school, that the smartest thing to do was going to be to just use some fundraising money to get we are running a pilot program for 7th and 8th grade general music, where it's like a leveled class. So there's like a general music 1 and a general music 2, where you have to have taken the first. So me and the other band director, each of which we both teach one general music class, we decided this was the time. So like that would be like the final piece of my job that would be challenging to do online. And it is now going to be super easy to do online.
Right. And I think that's, our tool was built for this moment, which is good, but it can also, it's not, I don't like the word complicated because it freaks people out. It is a program that requires involvement. It is a tool with lots of options. And I think I'm a person who prefers choice over almost anything. And so like, I like how flexible the program is and how much you can do with it, but it also can be very difficult, like we were just talking about, for people to kind of realize that it can also be pretty simple. So I think like I'm trying to remember that also, and make sure that people like know where to find the pre-made resources instead of starting things from scratch. Making sure people know where our support resources is. Support resources are, because I'm saying this to everyone, so I'm going to say it here now. We have an impeccable reputation as a support team, and I am extremely determined to maintain it during this time of crisis. So yeah, it's nice to kind of talk through, and I'm interested to hear about how you're utilizing it, because I think those experiences are the most helpful to people, to give them an immediate translation of like, oh, I understand what that is and how that can work, instead of me saying like, here's the best way to organize your classes. And people are like, I don't even know how to make a class. And I'm like, okay, cool. Let's backtrack. So
yeah. This is perfect. So this is exactly like, we're 25 minutes in, but now I'm actually explaining what this episode is. So this was exactly the reason why I thought it would be good to do this, because teachers are struggling, and I am a very recent user of MusicFirst, and I'm in that stage of figuring everything out. But I also I would like to believe that as a technology, like someone who is not afraid to flip knobs and buttons in the system preferences of my Mac, and someone who uses like super nerdy productivity apps to organize their life, like I would like to believe that I have my head wrapped around how the idea of like an application wants to be used a certain way. How do I use it in the way that it wants to be used? Mm-hmm. But also like using its unique strengths. How do I then use it in a way that it's gonna meet my goals? So I'm looking at MusicFirst, and there's lots of things that I see. Whereas like I'm not looking for like, how do I do this thing? I'm looking at how do I understand how this software is organized in a way where I don't have to ask myself, like, how do I do this one thing? How do I do this one thing? Instead, I'm like understanding sort of the deeper underlying structures of it, so that I can kind of figure stuff out on my own. So that's kind of the approach. Like, I don't want today necessarily to, like, there are some specific things I want to ask you how to do, but I don't want to like do a how-to. You're like you said, your support team has well documented all of this stuff on video, and it's available. I'll even put a link in the show notes to your customer support page, where like, if you want to know how do you make a class, like that is all available for someone to watch. And yeah, so I mean, like, can we go at it? Can we do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so like, first of all, Chrome is the preferred browser of choice.
Yes, sir. the reason why we go with Chrome is that the audio recording and processing power is the best out of all of the web browsers. So there are general things that will work on other browsers, like you can log in. Things like answering a written assignment with an image built into the question. Those are all things you can do in any browser, but you can get kind of tripped up with the recording aspects. So short answer, yes, Google Chrome is going to be the way to go for any device except iPad or iPhone. We have an app for those called the MusicFirst student app. It's available for free in the App Store. It functions like any other app. It uses the same website, username, password to log into it. But iPad, iPhone are the only two devices that would utilize that app. Everything else, Google Chrome is the way to go.
This is a self-serving question. I have been putting a lot of my resources into living off of just an iPad these
Amazing.
days. And actually at some point, if I stop looking directly at you, it's because iOS 13.4 is coming out today, and it's adding cursor support to the iPad. And
ooh, yeah, baby.
My body is ready. Not to mention iCloud shared folders. Can I finally kiss Dropbox goodbye?
I sure
Thank
hope so.
you. I really hope so. Give me them shared folders, iCloud. Right. So I'm like asking myself this question, like the iPad added desktop class Safari browsing this fall. Mm-hmm. Does that, I imagine that it's running on the same engine that the Mac runs Safari on. Like, what does the app on an iPad do differently that, like, because I would imagine that your app is just like a web wrapper. Like, it just is a little web browser running in the MusicFirst app.
Yeah, so recent app updates, if I understand correctly, they are allowing access to the microphone from the browser. Previously, they were not. So if you had needed to complete a recording of any kind, whether it was in any of the software or the generic audio recorder built into the classroom, you had to do it through an app. It couldn't be accessed through the browser at all. So Apple, in order to make money in the App Store, forces you to build the app, even though people aren't paying for it, the fees, et cetera, et cetera. So that is why we built the app in the first place. We are working on updates and plans so it's no longer as essential. Something
does the MusicFirst app, sorry to cut you off, the MusicFirst app on iPad just bounces you for the audio stuff. Doesn't it usually just bounce you to a third-party app like Soundtrap to do the audio? Are there actual applications within the MusicFirst interface that require an audio upload?
There is a generic audio recorder that is built into every classroom that you can utilize without an additional software tool. So if you're recording in Soundtrap, it's obviously going to open up Soundtrap. But if you just do a basic audio record assignment, record yourself practicing for 3 minutes, that would also utilize the app, but no software.
Got it. Okay, that makes tons of sense. So yeah, I guess in my dream world of living on an iPad, we just have to wait for Apple to make Safari better before.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yup. All right. So that's helpful. So I'm in Chrome. I'm logged in here. First of all, I gotta let in those cookies.
Gotta let in those
MusicFirst.
cookies.
You gotta do it. My students are like, we can't see anything, and I'm like, did you eat all the cookies?
Yeah.
You gotta let in the cookies. So will people know what I'm talking about?
I mean, hopefully people forget, because once you allow it once, unless you clear your cache, or cache, as Kanye West says, once you clear your cache, you have to re-allow the cookies. So, I mean, hopefully people do it once and then forget about it. But yeah, I think people are going to know what you're talking about.
The thing is though, like, I ignore that button on like if I go to a web article online, I'm like, no, I don't have time for this. But God. You gotta like.
I'm the total opposite. I rage click out of those things like you wouldn't even believe.
Oh, gosh, I just don't always know. It's like a privacy thing for me. I'm like, I don't know what this website is going to do, but you gotta do the cookies.
You gotta do the cookies. MusicFirst is not doing anything with your anything, so just allow the cookies, please.
So when we log in, we've got kind of like I don't know what the UI word is for this, but I'll call it like a dual toolbar. We've got like a toolbar that goes across the top of the screen and then one that goes across the side. And I want to talk a little bit about how these are organized because I think it will help people to know where to find stuff. So the home button, which is the red one in the upper left, that'll always take you to the main home screen, which is what opens up immediately when you log into MusicFirst.
Yes, sir.
Software is like a way to just access all of the apps that you're subscribed to within MusicFirst.
Correct.
I don't think that needs explanation, does it?
I hope not. But if it does, email support@musicfirst.com. We're here to help.
Yeah, do it. Awesome. What is the resources tab up here?
The resources is a new-ish space where we can add and incorporate links to other websites. So they aren't direct integrations to other software tools, but they are easy access points. So we have a variety of different options we can turn on and off. We used to have just a link to Google, but I'm not sure if we activate that regularly anymore. There used to be a link to Spotify, so you could log into the web player if you had a Spotify account. It was not a Spotify account that we were giving you. It was just a quick login access. Intune Monthly is currently included. So it's just a folder of links to different potential areas on the web that you may find useful. Musictheory.net is the easiest example.
So it is exactly what it says. They are resources,
Yep.
but not explicitly connected to MusicFirst.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, so then we've got a button called Content. Now, underneath this, we've got MusicFirst Library, School Library, District Library, My Content, and then My Premium Content. Can you distinguish between those a little bit?
Certainly. The MusicFirst Library is the global full MusicFirst community space for pre-made content. All of the content there has been generated by music educators on our staff, but more importantly by teachers who are currently and actively using the program with their students. So Robbie, if you come up with some really dope lessons for your general music classes that you would like to share with the world, you can choose to do so. We don't take anything without your consent, but a lot of people are moved by the spirit. So that is a space where all users can access and all users can share into that space. The My School Library would be if you and I were co-teachers on the same MusicFirst classroom site. Instead of adding each other to one another's classes in order to share content, you could say, okay, I made this really cool lesson. I'm going to share it with my school. Then I, as a teacher, have access to it as well. I can make a copy into my own account and make changes. The district library works in exactly the same way, but it connects different URLs. So if I have mateyko.musicfirstclassroom.com, you have burns.musicfirstclassroom.com, but they're connected at the district level, we can still share lessons, assessments, units, assignments with each other. My content is everything that you have created, edited, or shared, saved in your account. And we do have some premium content options, which are additional content packages you can purchase. Those would be something that isn't included. I mentioned Barb Friedman earlier, so another shout out to Barb. Her book with lessons and content is digitized in our platform. Inside Music is a composition curriculum utilizing Noteflight. Those are the kind of things you can choose to purchase if you wish, and they would show up in my premium content.
Because my co-teacher and I are using pre-existing MusicFirst lessons, that nothing's going to show up there, correct? That's like stuff that I made specifically.
Yes. So the My Content area is content you've created or copies of things you've pulled into your own account.
So if I've pulled in an entire class from MusicFirst, which we'll get to in a second, would that show up under here?
No, the courses in the MusicFirst library function a little bit differently than any of the other content. The course becomes its own class, like you were just saying, and so you can find all of those resources more organized in the class that is created. I'm honestly not sure if all of the course content shows up in My Content after you use it. I think the answer is yes, but it will not be.
Actually just...
It won't be as well
I'm clicking
organized.
around. It is. It is actually there. So
Okay, cool.
I just had to click. Favorites was selected by default. I had to click on the drop-down menu and then select the class that I had imported first. Okay, cool. So next up is My Classes. Now this is interesting. I think that a few other teachers might find themselves in a situation like mine where they are turning to MusicFirst kind of like frantically in a moment to just try to kind of temporarily solve the problem of online teaching, but maybe their district has not like really baked in full support for it, or maybe it's like in my case, it's technically not supported at a district level. And the reason for that is perhaps different for everyone, but in my district, it's because of this. There's like this protocol that manages single sign-on where our students log into Canvas and Google through the same username, and MusicFirst like doesn't work with that protocol. So basically, the short version of this story is that my co-teacher and I have imported a list of generic usernames and passwords that don't actually have any student data. For example, General Music User 1, General Music User 2, and then we have a separate private numbers spreadsheet that links the names of the students to those different accounts. So we're not taking advantage of MusicFirst directly sending its grading to our learning management system, and we're not even really seeing the students' names. You can I mean kind of get around it by like a first name is appropriate. So like we can easily see who's submitting which work. But what I'm saying is we had to manually add the students, and I think a lot of teachers are going to find themselves here. So when you go to My Classes and you create a class, you have some options. You can reuse a MusicFirst existing class, or you can create your own. Now, this is one of the first things that I emailed you about when we were going through this. I think the fastest way to get up and running is to just, great artists steal, man. Like I just think take a custom class. For my general music class, I took the middle school music technology course that is already in. Yeah, it's really, really quite good. And then from there, I associate the students that I had uploaded in my spreadsheet with that class. And there's no limit to how many classes a student can be enrolled in. Am I right?
Correct.
So for someone like me who, like, these classes are just ways to deliver content, they're not actual classes I'm teaching, since I can't in any way associate a class in MusicFirst with a real class that I teach. It doesn't really matter if the way that I deliver content to my students is to just basically create a bunch of different existing classes, right? Like I can just associate my students with any number of existing MusicFirst classrooms.
Yeah, MusicFirst classes. Yeah, exactly. So there are, I think, in the general music section of the MusicFirst library, 6 courses, which are full organized curricular resources that become classes themselves you can add students to. So there are 6 in general music. There's middle school, elementary school, and high school for band, choir, orchestra. There's one for music theory. So you can utilize any of those resources and put as many students into as many classes as needed. I think your use case is very unique because of your security needs and requirements. Most teachers are creating classes that directly reflect when they're seeing students. So period 1, band, 7th grade, general music, period 3/4, black days, or whatever it is. And they're adding students specifically to those classes. I think that this is, again, sort of the replacing what you're doing with the technology, doing it digitally exactly how you're already doing it on paper. I think that's what most teachers are doing. And because there's no limit to how many classes you create, you can always delete a class that's not working for you. You can always segment students in a class or outside a class. So it's not as common, but we do have folks who use like one large class for their entire band, and then a clarinet class for every single clarinet player, regardless of which band they're in, to give them specific clarinet assignments. So this is another one of those. The program is very flexible. At its most simple function, you create a class based on when you see your students, and you put those students in it. In a case like yours, though, it is flexible enough to say, I need these 12 students to have this music theory content, so I'm going to put those students in a class. And I need these students to get this general music content, so I'm going to put those students in a class. But I would say, based on what you're describing, most teachers are using it in a bit more straightforward of a way.
Okay, that makes sense. That seems to be more clear and direct. What I'm doing is, I guess the benefit for what I'm doing, or at least what I've found, is that let's say that I add the middle school general music class to my MusicFirst, and then I invite all of my 10 students in that class to that class. Mm-hmm. And now I've run out of content in that class. They've finished all the assignments. Is the way that MusicFirst wants me to add more content to... It sounds like for most people this is not the case, but in my case it would make sense to just add a new pre-existing MusicFirst class curriculum and then invite all of my students to that class as like another class that they're a part of. Whereas most other teachers, you're saying, would want to... they would want to actually just import the units from other pre-existing MusicFirst classrooms into their already existing classrooms, which sort of directly one-to-one model after their class load.
Correct. I think a big component to this as well is how much teachers are using it for grades. So the reason why teachers are creating... I even have a couple of teachers in Illinois who have sort of duplicates of classes because they see different sections of students all in the same ensemble. So they even have like 10 classes at a time. And the reason they do that is because their grade book for the school has classes separated in that way. So yes, what you're saying is correct. It is usually easier for teachers to pull in that pre-made class content, all of those units, what we call the course, and then pick and choose what you want to use. Because I think it is also a rare instance that teachers want to use every single thing that they see or feel like it's easy for them to manipulate within the course itself. I think a lot of teachers have found themselves making a copy of that middle school technology class and then sort of scrolling through each unit and using them in whatever order that is appropriate in their existing classes.
So let's say that I've got a class called General Music. It's not something that I imported from the MusicFirst class library, but it's just a class that my district has set up for me. But I see that your middle school music technology curriculum has a lot of lessons that I want to pull from it. What's the easiest way to do that?
The easiest way to do that is to make a copy of the course in your own account, then access those resources and reuse a unit or a lesson into the class that you have set up already. The other way to do it is search by the title of the assignments and see if they have been separated out. In some cases they have, and in some cases they haven't. So to save yourself the time of searching for each lesson to see if it's been pulled apart to be used by itself, because there's no limit to how many classes you create, using that course, having all of that resource listed in a class, even if there are no students in it, and then reusing what you want to utilize in your existing classes.
So if I wanted to just pick and choose lessons from a variety of middle school pre-existing classes, I could just import them all into my MusicFirst, kind of like I'm teaching them all, but only have my students actually be associated with one class. And then I'm clicking the green reuse button next to the units and lessons I want, and then reassociating those copies of those lessons with the actual class that has students in it. Okay, that makes total sense.
Exactly.
Like, I should have said this up front as a new user. Like, when I saw the content, I was like, my eyes went, no one can see this, but they widened.
I can see them.
So
His
like,
eyes are very wide.
Yeah. They're like, I was just thinking to myself, like, the things that take, like, what we're in, because of the time that we're in, like, I just see a lot of teachers who are scrambling right now to make stuff. And I'm seeing a lot of reinventing the wheel. Like, there's so much content in MusicFirst that is organized in a logical, engaging, and thorough way. Like, you don't have to remake this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we have brought in the best people to make the content, especially the course content, and the teachers who are choosing to share. We never get someone who just shares like a lesson that just says, read this paragraph. It's always people who say, like, look at these images, listen to this audio recording, watch this YouTube video of a professional ensemble with historical instruments. Like, and then record yourself with a Beethoven backing track or whatever. I don't know. So the lessons there in the course and outside the course are really built out. They have a lot more options to utilize for students, as opposed to you like going to Google and finding those images and getting those videos. In particular, a big thing that I recommend is checking out the music theory section of the library, because you'll find the whole 8-unit course that you can use with students, but broken out from that, you'll also find like a 10-question automatically graded quiz on key signatures. Like, it's an image, it's multiple choice. Students say, oh, this one has 4 flats, it's this. So instead of you going to Google and downloading all those images and remaking all those questions, it's in the library, it's automatically graded. Those are the kind of places we want people to be starting with, because you're right. You see this, I was mentioning this in my webinar this morning. So when creating a task with Soundtrap or Foundation, you can give your students a pretty blank slate, but that can really freak out some students. And I think it got me thinking about how our platform as a blank slate can really freak out educators. So getting teachers seeing the pre-made resource instead of getting frustrated by creating it from scratch, like you were just saying, is such a good place to go. So I'm glad that we're spending this time talking about the library, because I think it's a good reminder for me that that's going to be the best place for people to be right now, and not trying to figure out how to create something from scratch that may or may not work for them and their students.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to steal the content. And steal is, I'm using that word because like we are as artists, our quality is defined by our ability to like just, build off of the great work that's been done before us. And, that sort of like exchange of ideas and content is like sort of the root of good teaching, I think.
Yeah.
So you got to do it. So let's go down, we've made our way effectively to this left sidebar. I'm skipping the like language and the messages and the account. Like there's a lot of good stuff on the top of that upper toolbar that's important at a technical level. But I think where I started to get hung up conceptually is with some of the stuff on this left toolbar, like the specifically things that you can create.
Cool.
So MusicFirst distinguishes, I'm big on like levels of hierarchical organization in software. So MusicFirst has lesson plans, units, tasks, and assessments. I know that those are not like a hierarchy that like where one is directly underneath another. I know that it's a little more complex than that. How does MusicFirst want me to conceive of and organize these 4 types of content?
I love that. This is something that I know about you because we've talked about this before. Like when we very first met, I feel like this is the first thing that you said to me. It was like, hey, so there are these 4 options. Why aren't they organized in a way that makes more sense? And I was like, cool. Hey, it's so nice to meet you. No, but I think it's an incredibly valid point, because I think people are also looking for that sort of structure, and they assume it is there. And when it is not, it can be convoluted. So it's a lighthearted but valid. I appreciate your concern.
I was going to be nicer on the air.
No, it's fine. Everyone knows the truth now.
I think I also said lots of disparaging saxophone comments to you the first time we met.
Potentially. I mean, which are like also pretty valid. So I understand. Yeah. So the list is not in a hierarchy. How the hierarchy would function if we rearrange the list would be a unit at the top, because a unit can contain multiple lessons and multiple assessments. Below that would be a lesson plan, which is just a digital version of a lesson plan. Y'all, if you aren't sure what a lesson plan is, we got bigger problems to be talking about. Underneath that is the task. A task can live inside or outside a lesson plan. And then sort of separate from that sequence is an assessment, which is an online test or quiz. The assessments can have questions like multiple choice, true, false, short answer, fill in the blank, matching. I always forget matching. Anything with a preset answer is automatically graded. So if you have a 15 multiple choice question assignment, you can just give that to students and it's automatically scored. Anything with a short answer component, it's going to score all the questions it can and leave the short answer component for you. An assessment can live outside a unit. Most assessments do, or it can be placed inside a unit with additional lessons. Those lessons can have tasks or not. A task can exist outside of anything by itself.
So if I'm thinking about like the way that Google Classroom or in my case Canvas works, like ultimately an assessment is where a student is showing me that they've learned something.
Yes.
So if I'm grading work in MusicFirst, can I technically just give assessments?
You can, but you can also, and this is, I think this is a good point because this trips some people up as well. Sometimes you can create a task and give it a grade. So you can create like a practice first assessment assignment with the red, yellow, green note feedback and an automatic score and assess your students using that task because the task can be added to the gradebook. So the assessment option is not your only option for quote unquote assessing your students. It's just the designation that we chose for this particular type of assignment that is most commonly used as a more comprehensive demonstration of what the student has learned because you have multiple question options.
So, okay, so an assessment is like, it's almost like a test, like a test that I construct. Mm-hmm. Like a written test, like multiple choice,
exactly.
Typing in text fields. Okay, so an assessment is not like, it refers specifically to that type of, gosh, I wish I could do words.
That type of assignment.
Yes, okay, so an assessment can be a task.
A task can be an assessment.
Okay, so I'm going to give a test, and the first question is, what's this note on the staff? The next question is, what's this note on the staff? And the third question is, what year was Beethoven's Third Symphony composed?
Correct.
That is an assessment, and if I want to have a student submit that for a grade, then I make a task, which is to do that assessment.
No.
You're
I confused
nodding
you.
your head.
My language is confusing you. You can use a task to assess your students. A task can be a variety of different things. The task is also just a label for an assignment type. An assessment, capital A assessment in MusicFirst, can also be used to assess students, but the word assessment is also an assignment type designation.
Okay, so I think I've got it. I'm going to say it all back to you. Okay. So tasks are like the ultimate, demonstration of a student doing stuff. Like, I want you to comment on this discussion board. That's a task. I want you to make an 8-measure loop in Soundtrap. That's a task. I want you to watch this YouTube video. That's a task. I want you to do whatever. Those are all tasks, and those make up the core of the things that my students are going to demonstrate that they know and can do.
Yes.
An assessment is a specific type of, it's like a graded, like a pencil and paper test, but that I can give digitally to a student. So tasks, should I choose, can be organized inside of lesson plans, which are basically like digital. They're like, it's an organizational tool. They're like, this is I think where I got tripped up, because like a lesson plan isn't like, it's not like a folder that stores tasks. It is kind of, but it's more like a way of making little digital web pages that organize content and explain instructions and give context to so like a lesson plan could be like, hey, we're going to talk about country music this week. I can like put a bubble of text inside of that lesson plan that explains the objectives. I can embed a YouTube video. The lesson plan is just a way of like getting a bunch of content and instructions and data all on the same page so that a student can see them in context of one another.
Exactly correct.
And then a task can be associated with that lesson plan. So if the lesson plan is, hey, we're going to do country music, and your first task is comment on this discussion board, and the second task is make an 8-measure loop, those two tasks can be associated with the same lesson.
Yes.
And then all of my lessons can be underneath of a greater hood called a unit.
Correct.
So maybe my unit is like, I don't know.
Genres.
This is like, yes, thank you. Thank you for having the words. Musical genre, and like country music is just one lesson plan, and maybe we're doing that for a few days, and then maybe we're doing some hip hop for a few days. So then we have 2 lessons underneath of one unit. I just think you have to flip the word unit and lesson plan in order of. But
I mean, you're not wrong.
All right, this makes a lot more sense to me because we have the same trouble with Canvas. I remember being in writing curriculum for this very general music class, this pilot program, and I remember being in the, because like curriculum writing there's never enough time, and everyone is always like paid to be there, and just like, but you have like a week of just full long, you never end up like being able to like totally do as much work as you really need to be able to like make it meaningful. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Like this is so much the situation that we as educators find ourselves in. Like when you're like defining policy or structure, you just, there's never enough time. You have to decide like, okay, in the time that we have, what can we do that's going to effectively maximize the hours that we're spending under the same roof so that teachers can actually get meaning out of what we're doing. But I'm like thinking way bigger picture, and I'm at the whiteboard in the curriculum writing, trying to like with like a marker, trying to understand like how does Canvas organize its different components, because there's like a unit at the top, but then there's lessons within the unit, but then there's modules which are like they can be used like units almost in every way, but they're not really. They're more like adjacent ways of combining content, but that aren't actually. So I'm like trying to draw it all on the whiteboard, because if we don't figure it out, if we don't organize all of our different disciplines the same way, then teachers will be confused. And at one point, this is my favorite story, is like one of the people who's writing curriculum is like 9 months pregnant, and she's just like had it with me. She's just like, listen, dude, we don't have time for this. And I'm like, no, it's so important. She stands up in the middle of the meeting and she says, Robbie, we're getting paid. Sit down. We're getting paid. And I was just like, I just threw my hands up.
At that point, you just need to defer. Like, you just, yes, ma'am. I will sit. Sorry.
It was great because it really was the truth. Like, you want to like understand this stuff from the top level, but I think it's important, in at least as far as like if you understand where stuff goes, then it's less. It's not as easy to get lost if you know where your stuff lives.
And that is my very strong feeling as well, which is why whenever I do individualized training webinars, which we have suspended temporarily, but we'll get back to eventually, hopefully. I always start with, you create your first class and these are your class functions, because if you don't know where all of your assignments are going, if you pull in a bunch of stuff from the library and it saves as a favorite and it's not actually in your class, and you spend half an hour doing that and you can't find what you've just done, you then get frustrated and don't come back. So that's why I always say, like, put things in your classes, organize them this way. These are the things I recommend, just as a suggestion to get you thinking about how it's all going to fit together. Because like the worst case scenario for me is somebody logs in, thinks that they can't do it, and then they freak out because they don't know where to look. They don't know where to start. And that's, for me, it starts in your class organization, but it's the least sexy of all the things that not that like the content library is sexy per se, but it's more sexy than class organization. And so people are like, I want to see the content, show me the pretty software. And I'm like, I will, I promise, I swear. But this part's important too, right? I push up my glasses.
Totally. Yeah. No, I mean, that's why like we haven't talked about actually like what any of the software does yet, because I'm just like, to me, I open it up and I'm like, where am I? So that's it's so important to get a handle on. So let me tie these last two topics together. So we talked a little bit about importing classes and stealing content from them. We talked a little bit about how the different creative components of MusicFirst are organized. If I have my own class, if I'm one of these teachers who has a class set up, but I'm like pulling different content from other pre-existing MusicFirst classes, what level of the hierarchy does it make sense to pull from? Like, does it make sense to pull units or tasks? Can I pull a task or a unit, or do I have to pull only lesson plans from other classes?
So if you're going from the content library into your class, you have the option to pull a course, which is the full curricular resource set. You can pull a unit with multiple lessons. You can pull an assessment by itself. You can pull a lesson by itself. A task cannot be shared to the library and therefore cannot be taken from the library. If I have 3 different classes as a teacher in MusicFirst all set up, I can share any element from class to class. So if I have a unit that I want to do with 2 of my classes, I can share all of those. If I have one specific assignment that I need all 3 classes to use, I can reuse it to those classes or make it a favorite and schedule it that way. So from your own personal class to class, you can share anything. From the library, you can share units, assessments, lessons, and the courses. Okay,
cool. So a task pulled in must be associated with a lesson.
Correct.
Got it. So does MusicFirst, would you say it's easier to use if you are at the least structuring lesson plans?
I don't think so, because a task is so flexible. So a task can include a bunch of supplemental content as well. So if you want students to look at an image and listen to a reference recording and then do something in Noteflight, or then record themselves, or you want students to just open up one of the software tools and read an entry on saxophone, the task is so flexible that you don't need the structure of a lesson plan in order to share additional resources with students. The lesson plan is handy if you want students to do multiple tasks all within one sort of content area or concept. So with this country music lesson we were talking about, if you want students to submit a written response to a recording, find a YouTube video of a song in the genre, and record their own loop in Soundtrap. If you want them to do those three things in the context of the information you have shared through the lesson plan, then the lesson plan is going to be the best way to go, instead of giving them 3 random tasks that happen to all be connected. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. So in theory, if I'm a teacher and I've just been told you got to give an hour worth of work online tomorrow, and you have a MusicFirst account and you want to just like assign to your general music class, like make an 8-measure loop, or you want to give your band class practice this melody and practice first, you technically could just get up and running by making tasks,
yes.
Just having a bunch of free-floating tasks. And because a task can contain all of the same rich media as a lesson plan, like videos, text, it'll look still very engaging.
Bingo.
To a student. Got it. Cool. Okay. We're getting places. I love it. All right. It's funny because I'm like mostly a band guy, as we have firmly established earlier today, but I'm using this for general music. So I want to talk a little bit about lessons and tasks that bounce out to third-party software.
Cool.
So I'm finding, like I did the country music lesson, by the way, is the first lesson in the middle school music technology course.
Excellent.
Published by Music. So it's like why it's my example. So
okay, cool.
I'm clicking on it now, and I'm here. You watch some YouTube videos, you read some text, and then there's a cool Spotify playlist of extended listening, and then one of the tasks is to comment on a message board some of the stylistic traits you hear in the music, and then another is to make an 8-measure loop that sounds, that matches the characteristics of style that you just commented. So like, you're going to do 8 measures in Soundtrap, and you're going to try to find a twangy guitar, maybe a boom tap drum loop. Are the lessons that are pre-made like this, do the Soundtrap and Noteflight excerpts that are associated with these lessons are they pre-made templates, or is it dependent on the teacher to set it up?
It is dependent on the software. So we use a system called LTI, which is learning something interlopability, I'm pretty sure is what it stands for. Someone can fact check that if they want. And that's what we use to connect the classroom to the individual software tools. How these software tools react and interact via LTI is unique to each software. So if you find a task with Noteflight, the template will be pre-made, no muss, no fuss. You don't have to do anything. It's there. It's ready. Soundtrap does not function in that same way. So in the case of Soundtrap, you need to update the template or remake your own task to put in the lesson plan that will utilize the template so students can submit their assignments all through the MusicFirst task.
So for this first lesson, the task where the students have to make the country music 8-measure loop, there's a little open in Soundtrap button. When the students click on open in Soundtrap, it just takes them to a blank Soundtrap project. If I wanted to give them 8 measures of a drum loop for them to lay some stuff on top of, just to add a little bit of clarity and structure to that assignment,
Certainly.
What would be the best way to have it from their end, when they click on open in Soundtrap, show them that pre-existing template?
To be honest, the best thing for you to do is to delete the task that's in the pre-made content and create a new one from scratch. Because of the way Soundtrap works, if you templates don't transfer from site to site. So if I'm on a site and I make a task with a template on it, you're not able to open that even if I successfully share the entire assignment with you. So what teachers have to do, unfortunately, in this particular software case, is copy and paste the instructions. You can save all of that text or information and create a brand new task using Soundtrap to put into the lesson plan.
I had an interesting thing showing up. Maybe you can explain this, where I clicked the open in Soundtrap button from the teacher view of that lesson, and I started doing some work, and then I saved it, and then when my students were in that same lesson and would click open in Soundtrap, it would open my project.
Interesting. It shouldn't
Yeah.
do that at all, because the process the teacher has to follow, if it's a totally, like, I'm starting from scratch, I'm logging in, I create a Soundtrap task, you have to set the parameters in MusicFirst, open up Soundtrap by clicking that open in Soundtrap button, create a template, and then you have to click a specific attach button. So it may have been a case where you ended up sharing via the collaboration with the class or sharing it in a different way. Because Soundtrap exists as a standalone software, there are some components that hold over when it was transferred into the MusicFirst classroom. So, for example, the Soundtrap dashboard has elements that are redundant because you're doing all your student management in MusicFirst. You're creating tasks to share assignments from Soundtrap to MusicFirst, as opposed to sharing everything through the collab and the assignment feature within Soundtrap. So it may have been a case where you shared the assignment or created an assignment using the Soundtrap dashboard instead of successfully creating a task. So students wouldn't be able to submit things to you back through MusicFirst, but the collaboration aspect would still be working, so they're seeing the work that you've done. Without exactly seeing what you did, that's sort of my guess about what happened there.
Yeah, that's okay. It sounds like it was not working as I intended it to, so it's not. It's a bug and when I say a bug, it's a user error, not a feature, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that's what I find. My biggest goal, let me phrase it that way. My biggest goal for MusicFirst is to get to a place where all of the software works exactly the same way. So every single software can transfer templates. Every single software can clear submissions. We have a couple software that element isn't available. And in some cases, it's impossible. In some cases, it just takes a lot of development work between the two teams. So we are always sort of working toward consistency and making things function in exactly the same way. But sometimes you come up with these cases where it's like, well, this is an exception to the rule because of these reasons, and this is what you have to do to get around it, which is my least favorite thing to have to explain to people, because I just want it to work all the same and they just want it to work the way they want it to work. So I think it sounds like you accidentally hacked a workaround, but it didn't quite get you where you needed to go.
No, because then, well, and then they didn't know how to submit, but that might just be a separate question. It sounds like submitting work is similar to templating. It's different for every app that's associated. So I guess it's not really, it seems like since MusicFirst can potentially include lots of different software, maybe it's outside of the scope of this discussion to talk about how you would submit an assignment or a task in every single piece of software because associated.
It's generally the same, creating and submitting, but there are unique components for each software. So the teacher creates a task, they select what software they want to use, they fill out the MusicFirst components, and they have to click open in the software. That's the same no matter what. Once you get into the software, things change a little bit. So with Aurelia and Musician, you have to attach a test in a certain way. In Noteflight, there's an attach the score button right in the center. In Soundtrap, it's in the file menu. In Foundation, it's in the top right corner. So each software has its unique attach option, though they do all have the ability to attach. And the same thing goes for student submissions. Usually the submit and the attach button are in the same place for each software. So in Foundation, attach and submit is in the top right corner. In Noteflight, it's in the center, attach and submit. Soundtrap, student submission is in the file menu as well. So once you figure out the specific steps for your software title, the secrets reveal themselves. And what I would say is that, shameless plug of my team and myself, we have actually just finished creating a series of student-facing resources, user guide entries and tutorial videos that are designed for students to use that show them how to complete any type of assignment that you create. So there are a couple audio recording examples. There is a video and a user guide entry for every single software tool. So your teacher has given you a Soundtrap task. What do you do next? I recorded all the videos. My colleague Tori, my right-hand gal, did all of the user guide entries. So those are sort of hot off the presses support resources that I think will clarify. And there are also, of course, teacher-facing resources that do exactly the same thing, telling you which software, what steps, where the attach button is. So that's sort of where I would direct people to, but giving them the general idea right now in this conversation that you fill out your MusicFirst elements after clicking create task, and then you have to click open in the software.
Can you share me to put in the show notes? Can you give me a link to those student-facing and teacher-facing resources? So
every MusicFirst classroom has its own unique website. So there isn't a way to click. Let's see. So if I sent you a link to like our demo site, it wouldn't open up for everyone. But
got it.
If you, there's a question mark in the top right corner of the MusicFirst classroom, and it's loading. You have the option to, in the top right corner is your question mark. If you add, so it's /support/userguide. If you paste that at the end of your MusicFirst classroom URL, that'll take you to our user guide section, and /support/tutorials will take you to all the videos.
Got it. Okay, cool. I can just put that in the show notes.
That'd be great.
Yeah, very cool, because that's super important. And it would make sense to me that maybe if you are organizing your tasks with lesson plans, that maybe if you're going to have a task that says make this thing in Soundtrap, maybe you just put a link to that tutorial right there in the task.
Yeah, and it's been an ongoing project to find all of those tasks. And this is good. I mean, I'm making a note of this new example that we have to go back through. We've worked with the Shed the Music guys to utilize the program in their resources in MusicFirst as a premium content option. And I've spent a lot of time with Bob working through what's the best way to train teachers, because their program utilizes a lot of Soundtrap tasks. So we went back through, edited all of those spaces, added directions. So yeah, definitely it's an ongoing project to go back through, find everything in the library, and give teachers the information instead of having that sort of fake / half broken task available. Yeah.
Cool.
It takes some time, but it's definitely something we're working
like
through.
It.
Yeah.
Well, and like the whole thing with the software having different ways of submitting, like these are super hard technical problems to solve.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything sort of, when you click the software button, everything looks like it's sort of all under the same hood, but it's really not. Like Soundtrap is like a totally different app that
right.
is, it's you're all kind of like stringing it together, but like the fact that it works at all with MusicFirst is pretty awesome. Like,
thanks. I think so too. And
yeah.
part of it is funny. Well, I think it's funny. I don't do any of the technical aspects. Tech support. I'm a music educator, not a computer coder person. But that's, especially on dates, that's the first thing people ask when I tell them I work for I work for a tech company, and then if they seem interested in that, I will give them more details. But people's first question is like, do you code? Are you a coder? I'm like, no, I don't know shit about shit. Like, I can't. I know how my program works, and I know how teachers can best use it. And so it is also amazing to me, even as an employee of this company, how it all works together and how we can make it work together. Like the brains of the people I work with on a regular basis are truly outstanding. Yeah, it's super impressive software.
I'm loving using it so far. So
good. I'm glad.
And this is so helpful. So I mean, like, let me ask you this. I feel like the next two tabs are like, if you're using MusicFirst to grade, you got to interact to some degree with the calendar and then the grade book. Now, I'm not interacting with the grade book because, like I said, I'm not allowed to use. I mean, I guess I could interact with the grade book and then just transfer the grades to Canvas. So I could be using this tool. Sometimes when I'm making a task, I'm a little bit unclear on what, like, between the unit tasks, assessments, which of those things need to have a start date and an end date in order for a student to be able to work on them. And then, like, does it matter or not if those things have a grade that shows up in the grade book, or, in order for a student to start working on them?
Great question. So a lesson plan needs a start date. An assessment needs a time frame, so when the students can start the assessment and when the assessment is locked out. You can set a time in between that. So you can even say you have from Monday to Friday, but once you start it, you only have 15 minutes. A task is available to students as soon as you finish creating it, and it does not require a due date. Assessments are put into the gradebook by default, but you can keep that grade hidden from students. So if you are utilizing the assessment type of assignments but don't want those scores shared, they don't have to be. And it is not required to add any task to the gradebook.
Got it. That's super helpful. So again, coming back to the idea of just if you're just scrambling to get started and you just need to put some work in front of your students, it seems again like the task is maybe the easiest and most flexible. Like if I just start throwing tasks out there, I don't need to be thinking about when they're due or how they're structured. Like I can just do the work, get it out there in front of the students.
Exactly.
Done. Okay, that's cool. I didn't realize a task didn't have to have a due date. So because some of the stuff was asking me to give start dates and due dates before it would show up on my student end, but that makes sense the way you've outlined that.
Yeah, and the one thing to remember, if you don't give a task a due date, it still is hidden from students, but you can make it visible without giving it a due date. So your default setting is no due date, hidden from students, but you can change that and still have no due date.
Got it. Okay, cool. So the next button on the left side of the home screen is this portfolio. Is that just a pretty way for students to organize and demonstrate their work?
So what's interesting about the left-hand navigation that we're going through is that I never actually use that space, because those are your global navigation buttons for every single one of your classes. you have almost all the exact same options within your classes. That portfolio area on the left-hand side is where teachers can see all classes, all student assignments that have been submitted, and make a note of which assignments have been bookmarked in each individual student's portfolio. If you open up a class, then your gradebook in that class, you'll see all your student names listed. Any text in the MusicFirst classroom that's teal or a teal button can be clicked on. So the student names in your gradebook on the left-hand side are all teal. If you click on any of their names, it takes you to the individual student portfolio where you can bookmark student work and highlight it to the top of the list. Everything a student submits throughout their entire subscription will show up in that portfolio. So you can bookmark things that demonstrate growth at the beginning of a unit, at the end of a unit, first day of school, last day of school. So on your left-hand side, that portfolio is a global view for all of your classes and all of your students. I would recommend doing your individual student portfolios within a class.
Okay, cool. That's helpful. That's literally a button I have not clicked until now because I'm super prepared for my podcast. So user management is the next button down, and this is where you manage students, faculty. Do most of the people who have started using MusicFirst just in the past week, are most of them using it at a district level, or are you finding that just single teachers are taking the initiative into their own hands?
Mostly single teachers.
Okay, so there aren't a whole lot of people maybe who are like, are most teachers doing the manual CSV file upload to get their student list?
So we have so right now we're running okay, never mind. Let me backtrack. I'm going to answer this question a different way. Typically, teachers who have purchased the product do use that CSV upload because you can add students directly into classes and it's one big batch all at once. Right now, with teachers who have joined in the last week or so, the majority of them are accessing through trial subscriptions on demo sites. So we have been setting up teachers we have been uploading teachers and students and creating their classes for them. So there are many teachers who will not even see a user management tab because they are not the admins of their MusicFirst classrooms. This will look a little different for you who is an admin. You have access to that user management area where you can bulk upload students, see all students in all classes and all other teacher accounts.
I'm grateful it's there. Admin buttons make me feel self-important.
Well, I have a super admin login type and it makes me feel super important. So
I don't appreciate you telling me that.
I'm user number 1 on every single site. But no one can see it but us. So
now I want that button. Why did you have to tell me that that's a button?
You can't. Sorry.
So let me ask you this. Like, I eventually have to go relieve my wife who's holding our kid. What kinds of things do you want people to know about MusicFirst?
That in addition to everything we've already shared, I really think that if you want to do it, we can probably find a way to do it. That is my favorite thing about working for this company, is that I care so much about this program and how it can be helpful to teachers. My favorite conversations to have are people who call and say, I have this class and these organizations and this kind of calendar and I need to do this, this, and this. What do I do? Where do I start? And I can say, sweet, let's jump on a webinar. Let's talk for half an hour. And we're going to answer all of those questions in one go. So I think that what I want people to know is that the program is extremely powerful and it can do almost anything you want it to do, which could be as simple as I want my 25 students in this class and I want them to see one homework assignment a week. Easy, beautiful. I love that. Let's do that. But it can also be a really incredible advanced learning management system for people who are ready to do more with it. And so I think just the potential and the flexibility and how easy things can be, even though they can be really complicated. That's kind of what I want people to know. Yeah.
Well, I can speak from the perspective of someone who's seen, presentations on MusicFirst and am aware of like how powerful all these organizing tools are that we talked about. I like knowing that they exist, but then also using it like not really in the traditional way it's expected to be used with like kind of managing my own user accounts, but also using it super minimally. Like I can tell you it's exactly as flexible as you're describing. Like I'm using 1% of the features of MusicFirst, but that 1% is making my students' engagement like 100% higher.
Amazing.
With the content.
I love it.
So it's been great.
I'm psyched about that. Thank you for those kind words. I appreciate that.
And like I'll just reiterate what you already said, because it'll like, I think it'll be, I'm going to just say a nice thing. Your customer support team really does rock, and you're either you're as super fast and efficient as you say, or I'm getting priority help, which either of those is fine with me. So really, like I get emails back so fast with questions that I ask to the support team, and it's been easy. Sometimes I'm like, I get an email back and it's like, oh, we actually just did it for you, and I'm like, oh, that's great. If I need to delete that from this public facing thing, because that's not something that you can offer, the 100% increase in teachers that have signed up.
I think it's leave it, because I need people to know how great we really are. What I appreciate you saying that. Genuinely, thank you. That is incredibly sweet. I love this team, and I really do work with the best people. And we all care at the same level, which I really appreciate. Things have not been going we have not been able to get back to people as quickly as we would like to right now. And that's been very frustrating for the people on our team, because, I mentioned it sort of as a joke earlier, but truly mean that we are the best team in the business. I would go head to head with any other tech support team for any company, period, hard stop, any day of the week. Just, I will stake my personal reputation on that no matter what. And so it's very difficult to say, like, it's taking us time to get back to people and it's taking time to get things set up. But everyone, for the most part, has been really amazing and really patient, and has taken the time to share kind words with us, which I really, really appreciate, because it is so valuable to be getting positive responses from people. So thank you, and to thank everybody. This is a little bit slower than normal. We're going a little bit slower than normal this time of year, but we're here and we're doing our best. So
yeah, well, and my hope is that, like, first of all, like, super good on your team for, like, there are a ton of digital resources that are being made free right now.
Yeah.
And so, like, and I'm hoping to feature some other people related to some other resources. Like, I'm sort of expediting some episodes here.
Cool.
I usually publish at a snail's pace of like once a month at best, sometimes once every 3 months. So like, I want to put it out there that, like, of all these resources that are happening, like, obviously good on you all and everyone who's offering free stuff. And I hope that once this mess that we're finding ourselves in is over, that, like, people just do, like, in our case, like, our hand was finally forced. Like, we've wanted to use MusicFirst at my school for so long, but when we found out we were losing our Macs that had GarageBand on them, we were like, well, don't have any other choice now, so let's just do it. And maybe, like, my hope is that with the increase in people who are using your software, that they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't live without this, once it becomes relevant to figure out what is happening with, like, once, should things return to normal, whenever that's going to happen. And people are thinking, like, okay, well, how am I structuring my classroom this year? Oh yeah, like, MusicFirst totally made my life easy at the end of last school year.
Yeah, and that's what we hope too. But I mean, ultimately it's business, and it's been nice to get our name out there in a really big way. And if people don't want to re-up, that's fine. We're helping people in the moment, and that also feels pretty good. So feeling good about right now, feeling good about the future. Everyone is stressed out to the max, but at least I'm home alone and no one can get mad at me if I'm talking too loud in the office, which happens. My voice is very loud. I'm a teacher. I can't help it.
We didn't do album of the week and app of the week.
Do we have time? I have time.
We have to. Let me just send a quick text.
Okay.
All right. Every episode, this is the only thing that makes every episode of the show the same, is we each share an app that we're using this week and an album that we're listening to. And in the interest of time, it doesn't have to be a lengthy discussion, but I just want to know, like, what's going on with you?
I have two things that don't necessarily qualify, but this is where I'm at. Okay. So I started playing Stardew Valley, which is a software application, which I think counts as an app, if that's acceptable.
You're the first person to mention a game for this segment. I love it.
You make your little character, and I'm like a handsome boy who came from the city, and I got my grandpa's farm, and I have a V-neck t-shirt, and I'm obsessed with myself. It's absolutely absurd. I've played 8 hours in the last 3 days. Like, it's truly ridiculous. If you ever played Harvest Moon on the N64 or any other console, it's exactly the same game. You like hoe the soil and plant your seeds and water your crops and get your farm animals. It's incredible. It's truly amazing. I'm having such a great time. It's all I want to do, even though I really need like screen break at the end of the workday. So I'll like take my laptop off my monitor and like go sit on my couch on the other side of the apartment and be like, yeah, this is a screen break, sort of, because I'm playing Stardew Valley. So that's my app. My album of the week, I'm not a big album person. I never have been, because I always had to pick and choose specific songs when I had like an iPod that didn't have enough space for all my music on it. So I would listen to an album, but like minus the 4 songs I didn't like. So I have never been in the habit of album listening, but I had some family stuff last week, and I was with my 2 brothers, and we spent a ton of time in the car, and we ended up crafting this amazing Spotify playlist, in my opinion, of covers. And we put it in the order of the original song and then all of the covers, and we have it kind of organized by genre and time period for the original. So it's kind of like working in a sequence. But it all started with like the Marilyn Manson cover of Sweet Dreams, and it just started from there. So I've been like crafting it and listening to it like pretty much constantly for the last 5 days since we all separated, because I'm like sad that my brothers live in different states. But also I'm extremely proud of this playlist. So it's not an album or an app, but that's what I have to offer this conversation.
You're thinking outside the box. Can you send me the link so I can link it in the show notes?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. I will make a note and do that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's pretty good, I think.
Yeah, the Stardew Valley thing is so funny, because like I've said 8 times in this recording with you, I've been playing Animal Crossing like half of the world, and these kinds of games of like life simulator but with very cute aesthetics, like this is exactly the escape that I think our world needs right now. I just paid off my house in Animal Crossing yesterday, which is someone who just took on a new mortgage back in November. Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, at least I paid off one of these.
Hey, you know what? Every little bit counts.
Every little bit counts. All right, cool. Well, I'm gonna go in opposite order. I listen to less podcasts and music when I'm at home a lot, because that's like commuting stuff for me. But I can tell you that on the way to running an errand this morning, I started to listen to the new Childish Gambino.
Is it good?
Album. I know I've listened to, I haven't finished it yet, but it is, it's like one of these things where he's like, it's just all one big track, but because I know that you want to skip around, traditionally I've labeled every track name just the timestamp of what it is. So I'm like thinking to myself, it's going to be really, really different from his sound, but it's honestly like, it's very clearly different songs, just that they link together in a way that is thoughtful. But it's clear, like when you click on the next track, like you're definitely listening to something with, and at least for the third of the album I've listened to, like there are clear verses and choruses to each of the tracks on the record. And it's got this like kind of like aggressive, dirty timbre, like to the vocal and the drums. That's cool, but the style is still very much like his really successful album, his last album, with like this kind of soul pop kind of sound to it. But I don't know. But then there's like a lot of really like tastefully chosen synths that you don't think should pay. Like one of them is like, it's like a synth paired with like a 12-string shimmering guitar, kind of like you would expect from like Led Zeppelin, or like it's like a classic rock sound,
Cool.
but then there's like this kind of grimy synth underneath it. I don't know. It's just cool so far. So I know that I'm premeditating that this will be my album of the week, even though I've only listened to a third of it.
Nice.
App of the week. Well, I should have been more thoughtful about this. Right now I'm using if you're into Mac apps, there's a pretty well-known Mac app developer. They make iOS stuff too. They're called the Icon Factory.
Okay.
And they recently published a new app called Tot, T-O-T. Mm-hmm. And it's just a little text scratch pad that it just gives you 7 little scratch pads. It's one of these things that's like purposefully limiting, but in a way that makes sense for my brain, where you just get, it's not like I still use a notes app for permanent stuff, but this is like, it's kind of doing what the Stickies app used to do for me.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh man, RIP the Stickies app. Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Shout
so
out.
it's like, but this is nice because it syncs over iCloud. So I open it on either of my 2 Macs and all my little temporary notes are there.
Cool.
And I'm using it right now. Like all of my things I wanted to talk about were just in a little tot. I can actually delete them now because I've transferred the relevant stuff to my show notes for the episode. So it's just cool.
Sweet.
It's just
I love
clean.
that.
It's got a very, very nice. It's just really nicely designed. It's actually, the Mac version is free.
Oh, cool.
So if you go to the Mac App Store and you need something to replace Stickies that is designed with very thoughtfully, it's cool.
Can we add to our agenda of future podcast conversations how people talk about technology and interfaces and experiences? Because I find that to be endlessly fascinating.
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
Totally, we can.
Amazing.
It's amazing. This has been so fun. I'm going to get murdered if I don't go upstairs.
Please
right
go.
now.
Say hi to Mary for me. We met that one time. I don't know if she remembers, but
yeah, she does.
Cool. And hi to your baby. What's your baby's name?
Yeah. Felonious.
Oh, the best. Cool. All right. We will talk soon. Thank you for this. This was truly lovely. Let's do it again sometime. And stay safe, stay clean. What are we saying now? Yours in quarantine. Jay. That's my sign off.
A sign off. Good. I'm just going to say bye. That was perfect. You win.
Ciao, baby.
All right. See ya. Bye.